Gather round, boys and girls. Gather round, people of all ages. Gather round to be taken into the paranormal, to be taken into the strange, to be taken into the world of jinn. Come, hear my stories, for with every telling of jinn stories, we'll be bringing you into the creepy, the abnormal, the strange world of jinn. Today we'll begin with a story that's close to my heart. This is a family member. It's close to me. I've known her all my life. This person went through the hardest trials of their life. This person has been through it all. And you know what? They experienced strangeness in their life. We'll begin with this person's childhood. We'll begin with the story of the shanty. You see, when they were young, their father died. He was poisoned and he was killed. And he passed away. This lady's mother was physically poor. She was illiterate. She didn't even know how to read the Quran. She just knew Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. She knew how to pray and that was it. And she had 7 children. Imagine, you're poor, you have 7 children. Her brother-in-law came along, took the remaining of the money. To make matters worse, a few days after her husband dies, her mother-in-law kicks her out. You know, it's like, take you and your children away, out onto the streets. So they go around. Now this is 1970s Kenya. This is a time of upheaval and strife. Just to set the background, this was a time when poverty was rampant, when people were poor, they were starving, and there was people like Idi Amin out and about. This was not a good time to be an Indian girl living in Africa. This was an Indian girl in a time of upheaval, strife, and a lot of poverty. Now, what did the grandmother do? She took them to the masjid. She took them to the masjid. And when they arrived at the masjid, they were given shelter. Now the shelter was in these shanty houses. They were made of corrugated iron. Imagine houses made of corrugated iron. 8 people lived under one roof. 1 mother and 7 children. 7 children under one roof. This was smaller than some people's bathrooms that they were living together. And there was 8 of them in total. And they would have bunk beds. And there would be this little girl. She was only 7, 8 at the time. And she would always sleep on the bottom bunk. Her brothers were favoured, so they would sleep on the top bunks. They would choose their own. But she would sleep on the bottom bunk. And then it began. You see, it began slowly at first. Almost like there was a cat on the bed, pushing here and there. It would slowly press. She'd feel, what is this? So she'd get up and look around. There's no cat here. There's nothing there. So she'd go back to sleep. And then he came. It was in the night that something came. It was like a man. And it stood over her watching. And it looked down with its eyes full of malice. And she began to scream. And when she woke, spiders covered her. Imagine a man's watching you from the shadows at the foot of your bed, and there's spiders, hundreds of spiders, and she'd only been asleep for seconds, and these were not phantom imaginations. She would scream, her brothers would light the match, whack the candle on, and put the candle about, and there was nothing there in the darkness, except from hundreds of tiny spiders all across her body. She would scream, remove the spider, ah, what are you doing? Imagine your little girl, 10 years old, and this is happening to you. You've lost your father, you've lost your home, you've been thrown onto the streets. Your mother doesn't even know how to read. She takes a job as a masseuse. She goes from house to house walking every day doing massages to people. She walks for hours every day just to provide. You're in this tiny shanty of a house made of corrugated iron, an entire house under one roof smaller than your bathroom, and then this happens. This terrible thing happens. So, after that first day, it was brushed off. It's just another thing. You know, weird things happen when you're living in that kind of area. I mean, they were near a grave anyway, but weird things happen, so it's just brushed off. Well, until it happened again. The moment the lights went out, she would go to sleep. Within 5 minutes, she was awake, screaming like her life depended upon it, screaming as though the murderer was standing over her with his hand on her throat. And yet there was nothing there except hundreds of spiders. All across her body, hundreds of spiders. To this day, she is scared of spiders. To this day, the sight of these 8-legged creatures scares her. And every night when she would sleep, she would see that man. And of course, her mother would ask for help at the masjid. And there was a man who came, so I will help your daughter, but there's a price. You see, with all things come a price. And so this man asked for the jewelry and gold that the sons were given when they were born. You see, tradition was that when the son is born, you would gift the family some gold. So the mother gave the gold, and then he happened to spot her last gold bangle just under her sari. He says, I want that too. Reluctantly, she plucks it off her wrist and gives it to the man. Now imagine, what kind of man is this who will ask for the gold off your wrist? And he did all kinds of things to this girl. Nothing bad in nature. I mean, he would slap her and say, Jinn, leave her alone. Jinn, do that. He would read verses that sounded like they were from another language. He would do this and that and claim that right around the corner the jinn would go away. It never did. Then one day, or seemingly out of the blue, this man shows up. Says, I will help your daughter. And the mother says, I have nothing to give you. I have given no bangle. The man shakes his head. Like, no. I will ask you nothing. I will ask nothing of you, not a penny. I will not even ask of a grain of rice of you. So he comes inside, he does the prayer. He makes prayer, he makes dua, and then the jinn is gone. And so with his dua, with the power of faith, the jinn was sent packing with the wind, never to be seen again. And so the story ends there. Come again next time for another fantastic but true story of jinn and their phantasms. Allahu Akbar, Allah.